Okay. Okay, so you're recording and you're live streaming. And
Great.
now I will start
Thank you.
the webinar, and that should let your attendees in.
You're still in charge of this, huh, Mark?
For now, Stephen and I are talking about ways in which, oh, and I'm supposed to make, is it Howard I'm supposed to make the host?
Can it be me and Andrew?
No, one of you can be the host, the other can be the co-host.
That doesn't matter.
Make Andrew the host. We'll take turns, Andrew. Is that okay?
No problem.
Hey, Howard.
Hey, Ken.
All right, so Andrew, you're now the host. If you want to, you can make me or Rich or somebody else co-host, if that's useful.
Can Howard be co-host or no?
Sure, you can have more than one.
Yeah, definitely go for that.
Let's see. Howard. Assign co-host. There we go. Did something just pop up on your screen, Howard?
Let's see.
I'm not sure it does.
Oh, well, you're co-host. Rich, if you just said something, it got bleeped away. Did we just freeze?
I'm mobile, so I might not come through. I was just saying that being co-host will show up in participants. You don't get an alert about it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Let's see how we're doing for members. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, we definitely have a quorum.
It's 6:30 exactly. Why don't we give it half a minute?
Okay.
Yeah, Colleen will be joining you in a moment.
Yeah, that's great.
Hey, I'm
If you
here.
Hello, Colleen.
Hey, I'm good. How are you? Hey,
Good.
Mark, thanks for the info.
I'm glad you worked out your conflict.
You know what? I only needed to be on the call for like half an hour and I didn't realize it. I thought it was going to be longer, so it worked out well.
Oh, excellent.
Perfect.
Why don't we get started? This is the January meeting of Manhattan Community Board 7's Transportation Committee. I'm Howard Yaris, co-chair of the committee. Andrew Albert is the other co-chair, and we have a great first agenda item that Andrew's going to handle. And that's something we are all very concerned with, and that
Yes,
is
thank
an
you.
update on mass transit.
I'm going to give you, everybody, some various MTA updates. This is all not solely to do with our district, but I'm assuming our members and our constituents travel outside of the district. So this is all should be of great interest. As you are well aware, the overnight 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. shutdown continues. Many transit advocacy groups and board members, in fact, have asked, when will this be over? When will it be okay? We're getting various answers. We're getting answers such as perhaps by the summer. We're getting answers that say when New York State Health Commissioner tells us it's safe to do it is when they will reopen, and things of this nature. Meanwhile, we have now 24/7 COVID operations taking place all over the place. And without a 24/7 transit system, it's pretty hard, unless everybody's driving, to get to some of these locations. I'm sure the middle of the night ones may not be as popular as the others, but there are essential workers that might want to stop at one of these on their way to their jobs, and they cannot because the overnight cleaning is continuing. We hope to get an answer a little bit later on when we can return to the city that never sleeps. I also heard the governor today mention that rapid testing might help to make restaurants open sooner. Well, if restaurants are going to go till 11 or 12 midnight and the workers don't leave at the stroke of midnight, they have things to do and things to clean up and cashiers and what have you. We need the 24/7 service. So we will be watching this closely. We have asked the MTA, my Transit Riders Council has asked for some metrics, what they would like to see prior to opening, and we have yet to get them. For those who use the C line, you will notice there's a lot of new cars, the new R179s, which had been trouble plagued for a year and a half and arrived a year and a half late, are largely now the majority car on the C line. They ride very smoothly. The signage is clear and they don't jag your neck when they start. So that is a welcome sight if you're a C line rider. As I'm sure everyone has heard, the stimulus bill that was passed recently gives the MTA a little over $4 billion. This is great news. This takes away the threat of the severe 40 and 50% service cuts that were scheduled for 2021. This does not take care of all of the problems, the financial problems the MTA is facing, and we do have a more friendly, transit-oriented administration in about a week coming into office, and with Majority Leader Schumer, who has pledged to help the MTA. I think we can look for some very good news this coming year. And I know that many transit employees are thrilled that the layoffs will now not take place. And we can look forward to some service guidelines that we all want to see. Mask wearing continues on a pretty good level. The estimates are 97 and 98% on the subways and buses. Yes, we've all seen people without them. And yes, we think they're jackasses for not wearing masks and putting their friends and neighbors and all of us at risk. I don't know how some people think, but the majority are by far wearing masks and wearing them pretty correctly, although some people don't have their nose covered, unfortunately, which is a little ridiculous. And some have them around their neck, which is absolutely worthless. But that part is good. Even though the capital program is in suspension because of the unknowns of the federal funding, there are some ADA improvements that are continuing to take place. Eastern Parkway, Brooklyn Museum, and Gun Hill Road on the Dyer Avenue line were recently made ADA accessible. In 2021, the 7th Avenue in Park Slope on the F and G in Brooklyn, Grand Street and Metropolitan Avenue on the L and G trains in Brooklyn, East 149th Street on the 6th line in the Bronx, Dyckman Street on the number 1 line up in Inwood at the northern end of Manhattan, Beach 67th Street on the Far Rockaway branch of the A, and New Dorp Station on the Staten Island Railway. All of those stations will be made accessible in 2021. So there are some good things happening. As far as cleaning goes, the 1 to 5 a.m. shutdown is for enhanced cleaning. Every train is getting cleaned every train car at least once a day, and every station at least twice a day. We have asked the MTA to start some software that people will know exactly the last cleaning of wherever you happen to be. And they are working on that supposedly. That would be great. I think that would make riders feel a lot more comfortable if you knew when your station and or train car was last cleaned. I was hoping to have a speaker explain the various cleaning procedures for tonight's meeting. Unfortunately, I was not able to get it in time for the meeting. I'm hoping to have that for our February meeting. Another good thing about the incoming administration is it is pretty clear, and we have gotten assurances that President-elect Biden will be signing the EIS or EAS necessary so that the MTA can proceed with congestion pricing. The governor will have to do a transit mobility panel. And then within a year, I would say revenues for the MTA's $52 billion capital plan will be coming in as a result of congestion pricing, but it will take a year to start getting those revenues, and all the readers have to be installed. But that delay, which was pretty obvious that the president did not want to sign that, will be gone. And one of the first things President-elect Biden will be doing is to give us the go-ahead for the law of the state, which is congestion pricing. You may have seen, if you ride the Times Square Grand Central shuttle, a lot of work going on. The shuttle formerly had tracks 1, 3, and 4. Track 3 has been done away with. So there will only be tracks 1 and 4 on the 42nd Street shuttle. This will allow for a much wider island platform between the tracks, which will allow for a lot more folks to be there without feeling congested. They are also building on the eastern end of Times Square a connection to the B, D, F, and M 6th Avenue lines. So the shuttle will not only connect all of the trains it connects with at Times Square now, the NQR, W, 1, 2, and 3, but it will also connect with the B, D, F, and M. So that will be quite an improvement. There is still a lot of work going on, and the shuttle is closed on certain days, so you must use the number 7 train if you want to go between Grand Central and Times Square. But this work is proceeding, and it's proceeding ahead of schedule. The last thing I want to talk about is a resolution that we have passed and the full board has passed over a year and a half. It's actually maybe even closer to 2 years ago, which was requesting DOT make the following intersections transit signal prioritization ready so that buses can get through much more quickly and not have to wait endlessly for some of these traffic signals. 73rd and Broadway for the southbound M57. You all know it starts at Verity Park there, makes the loop around 73rd Street, goes south on Broadway again, and west on 72nd Street. The bus is often delayed with several different traffic signals. We really need transit signal prioritization there. While I'm on that intersection, the northbound M104 also is delayed at 73rd and Amsterdam. That's a place where that bus could loop to the west on 73rd and up Broadway to proceed. 81st and Amsterdam, the M7, the M11, and the eastbound M79 get caught at that light because, as you know, 81st Street is one of those streets that meets and goes either direction from Amsterdam Avenue. We need it there. We need it at 87th and West End for the M86 select buses that are beginning their journeys to the east side. We need the same transit signal prioritization at 97th at West End for the M96 as it begins its journey to the east side, and 106th and Broadway where the M60 to LaGuardia Airport lays over on the west side of Strauss Park, and then, or actually on the east side, but on the west side of Broadway, and comes around. We could use these. Colleen, if you're on here, we passed this resolution almost 2 years ago, and there has yet to be any action by DOT on making these intersections bus friendly.
Hi, Andrew. Good night, committee members. I'm going to pull that resolution tomorrow and see where we stand with it. I'm guessing that all of these locations that you just mentioned were included in the resolution.
They sure were, yes.
Okay, great. I'll review it tomorrow and I'll get back to you by Friday.
If you have any trouble finding it, Colleen, let us know.
I will definitely do that, okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Andrew.
Howard, I think I covered most of the topics I want to cover. I don't want to monopolize, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Questions?
I have a question.
Andrew,
Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, Rich.
so obviously ridership is way down and we need to get ridership back, but people are still fearful about the safety of the subways. And I know that, we're saying that the cleaning is better than it's ever been and that it's, there are all these ways of saying that it's safe. But I think still emblazoned in a lot of people's minds is just the number of MTA workers who got sick early on. And also a lot of times when people do test out the system, things are both urgently need to be addressed. And one is, if on the workers' health, I think if the MTA, and I don't know what the data are, but if workers have been safe, if there haven't been many cases of workers getting exposed, that's a great sign, because the people who are in the system all day, every day, if you can say, there's a very low rate of positive cases among workers, that sends a signal that, if they're in the system all day, every day, and if I go in the system for 15 minutes, if they're not catching it all day, every day, if I go in for 15 minutes for a ride, it's probably safe. And then the other is on the mask issue, and you talked about it a little bit. That's got to be an urgent priority.
Yeah, Howard, we neglected to do something, which was to ask somebody to take our minutes. If somebody could volunteer to do that, I can certainly put down in the beginning of the minutes all of the topics that I raised. But if somebody could begin now, it's something that we're so enthusiastic we launch into the meeting, but we neglect to do that. So if we could get a volunteer for that, it would be much appreciated.
Do we have a
I'll do it.
volunteer? Oh, thank you, Ken.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for
Rich,
remembering, Andrew.
yeah, Rich, so about 52 transit workers have lost their lives due to COVID, starting in March through now. The rate has subsided greatly. And considering there are 30,000 workers, I would say that rate is pretty low. They've also taken recently, at many folks' urging, they've made a real effort to clean the work locations that the workers use in various places when they're on breaks and what have you. Those places have been subject to intense cleaning, as the stations and train cars have. It's very small number, but it's too high a number. Obviously, we didn't want to lose 52 or 53 folks, and the commuter rails have lost some as well. Both the Rudin, the NYU and Sam Schwartz Company have shown that your chances of getting ill on a train or bus are really low compared to a store or a school or another type of location. And I think they need to get that message out more and more. I'm riding pretty frequently. I am noticing more crowded trains, which I'm happy to see. I was even on some that were standing room only. And I'm happy to say that 99% on that particular car had masks on, and they were in the proper position. You won't always be able to social distance. So this is of vital importance. And I think I reported previously that Metro North and Long Island Railroad are testing an electrostatically charged air filtering system, which is showing great promise. It not only kills COVID, it kills the common cold. This is a game changer, and other systems throughout the world are now testing it. If it is successful, I think stores, businesses, offices, everybody are going to use this, especially if you can get a tax credit for it, which I'm guessing the new administration would not be opposed to. So yes, they need to get the message out better, but I believe, and I certainly do feel safe. Now, if you want to get into some of the other reasons people may not feel safe, there's been some highly publicized crimes, and these are quite disturbing. And I've spoken with the police chief, and I've spoken with various board members, and with the president of New York City Transit, and we all agree that fare evasion is massive now, and some of these crimes are crazy, and the people perpetrating these crimes did not pay their fare. If we can stop these things at the turnstile, the MTA would have a lot more money to spend on services, fare hikes would be less frequent and less high, and we could stop some of these crimes right at the turnstile. So yes, we'd like to see more police. I'd like to see them enforcing the masks wearing as well. There's been some very publicized incidents of bus operators telling people they can't come on and getting punched in the face because they were told you need a mask to get on. So in some ways, those things to me are more disturbing than the possibility of COVID. We've got to get a handle on this. People have to feel safe in every possible way.
And just one final thought is, and not in any way to minimize the crime issues that you raise, which obviously are incredibly important, that there is a paradox that will come, with people only feeling comfortable. to the extent that there are people who only feel comfortable riding the system because it's not that crowded, there will be a paradox that as it gets more crowded, it'll make people that much more concerned. And that's going to be an
Well-
issue, hopefully soon, as people start riding it more.
Well,
But
Rich, the
that
good
much
news
more-
on that, the good news on that front is that because we got some federal funding and hopefully we will get more, as soon as the numbers look like trains are getting more crowded, we're not running full service now. We can move forward and increase the level of frequency and thus still continue to social distance to a certain degree.
And again, that's a great message to get out, just to make people realize that, that's one more way the MTA is working to make things safe.
Absolutely.
Great. We
I
have
had a
Steve
question.
Brown and then Doug Kleinman.
Ken, did you have a question?
Yes.
Oh, I'm looking at hands up. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I just said something. In the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know how it was being transmitted, and people were wiping everything off that came into their house and their apartment. But now, the science is saying that it's primarily transmitted through aerosolized breath, and that surfaces are, I don't know whether they're not an issue, but much less of an issue than people feared. So I'm wondering why the continued emphasis in the MTA on cleaning surfaces, and couldn't the money be better spent in some other
Actually, in the beginning of all of this, one of the testing that the MTA was doing was this new antimicrobial on surfaces, which kept them free of germs for up to 90 days at a time. They have since found that, as you just said, this is not being spread through surfaces, but through the air, transmission of breath, coughing, talking, what have you. And so they have actually stopped doing that. So they're not wasting time doing that, but they are cleaning the floors. They are, as you know, trying to get the homeless services. So because at right before 1 a.m., they do clean all the trains out, and that's how they're allowed to really clean them. Hopefully they have learned a lot during this cleaning process so that this can be done in a shorter time frame and not have to have closures. But yes, the surfaces are not being addressed as they once were.
Good.
Great, Steve. And then who else do we have? We have Doug Kleinman and Bill Ortiz.
Thanks, Howard, and Andrew. A very impressive display of MTA knowledge. So,
Thank you.
I was a little in awe. Mine is
That's
just
what
more.
those hundreds of hours do to you. Thousands of hours.
Well, maybe more. Mine is just a simple request, and that is, it would be great if we could get someone for next month, and it's just a follow up of a request of any data. I think data would be powerful, whether it be the data that Ken just mentioned, whether it be the data that we spoke about. But if we want to make a point to the public, that's the type of stuff we can also put up on
Absolutely.
the website. And, there's nothing like a speech and data combined to hopefully, to speak to any concerns. But mine was simply just saying, if we can get them, great. It'd be great to have data before that we can sort of share, and data that, again, that we can put up on the website. That was my
Yeah, one of the things that's really impressive is there's like 3,300 subway cars, and they're all being cleaned at least once a day, some twice a day. That's a really impressive number. And 472 stations, twice a day at a minimum.
Thank you.
Yep.
Doug?
Yeah, thank you. And again, thank you, Andrew, for such comprehensive knowledge of MTA. I am in awe. Very much a supporter of the MTA. I think the city doesn't come back unless the MTA comes back. This is my monthly public service announcement. I regularly ride due to the type of work I do. I have an unlimited card, and I am on all kinds of surface and underground transit daily. And the buses and trains that I typically take are the M104, the M11, the M7, the M57, the M72, M86. These are select service. The 1, 2, 3 trains, NRQ. I don't know where the statistics are coming from. People compliant with masks. I would agree that most people have masks on, but to this day, and today, 3 times on 3 of my trips, people were without masks, in some cases, several people. I have yet to see any enforcement. I understand that the bus drivers are absolutely at risk and certainly were probably told not to intervene, and I understand that. But I've actually asked, and by the way, as you know, Andrew, because I've sent you some photographs of bus drivers not wearing masks, and either willfully or ignorantly not knowing that they had to because they have a plexiglass barrier.
They all know they have to. They've been told. And again, if anyone sees a bus operator not wearing a mask, please take down the vehicle number and I will report it.
Yes, and I haven't even sent you all the ones that I have taken. I have seen zero enforcement. I've asked a few bus drivers, very friendly, like, does anyone ever come on the bus to sort of enforce this? Or have you ever seen New York State or NYPD? Answer has been in my non-scientific poll, no.
I think you're right.
And so if we want the MTA back, I know that I am personally fearful when I sit next to someone who's not wearing a mask, and I have to keep repositioning my. So, on the select service buses, you have inspectors coming, checking your dupes.
Not as many as used to.
That's my report for the month. I have yet to see.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I will absolutely report this again. There have been a few articles about the fines and how few times the fine has been imposed on people. I'm guessing that they don't want to get into altercations on the vehicles themselves. I have seen some bus operators actually close the door in somebody's face when they were trying to board without a mask. I have seen that. But that's only when they were able to pull away, because that person is just as likely to come around to the other side and smash the operator's window in. I've heard of that happening at various locations. So, but I hear you and I agree with you. And that's a minimum that we should be imposing, enforcement of the masks.
Thank you.
So anytime you have a bus number to give me, I'm happy to report it.
I'm only one person in a city of millions, but yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Bill?
Thank you, Howard, and thank you for all that information, Andrew.
Sure.
Just to kind of echo Rich's point about improving riders' confidence of taking the MTA. I've been taking the train since the summer, well, late spring, early summer, and it was a wonderful time. But what I have noticed that has changed recently, and it could have been the change over the summer too, is that I've noticed influx of mentally ill and homeless people on the train. I mean, daily. I have no problem with them on the train, of course, but it's just, in some cases they're not wearing masks, in some cases they're being disruptive, and it's just not a very comfortable ride. So I just kind of have a question as to what has the city done or the MTA done to kind of, create a good riding experience for us on the train. When the trains are just also really quick, when the trains are really packed, I've noticed, because sometimes just like Doug, I'm actually Doug, I take the same exact route as you, probably less buses, but I definitely.
Are you stalking Doug?
I am. It's guilty. No, but I take 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, D, NQRW often, all the time. And the one thing I have noticed is that the windows are open. So at least it's being aired out when it is really packed.
That's one of the reasons the windows are open.
Yeah. So that's one point of information I wanted to give out, that like, if you feel uncomfortable, open the window yourself, but I just wanted to kind of go back to my first point on that. And I had another point about buses, but
yeah, I can, the Transit Bureau of the NYPD was made smaller due to the protests that were taking place during the summer. So we didn't have as many officers in the system as we once did. They have all been reassigned to the system, and we should be seeing more police presence in the system. Just to your point, I was on a C train on Sunday, and there was a homeless individual lying on a bench and was sneezing at least 25 times. I reported this to my contact at the Transit Bureau, and they had somebody pick the individual up and get him help when the train reached the end of the line. So yes, there are some individuals that are still troubled in the system. The overnight shutdown has actually gotten a larger number of homeless to get some help, whether it was housing, mental health, or other medical attention. That shutdown and has had that effect, but obviously there are still some, they come back during the daytime, and it's an issue, and you're absolutely right, William.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
I guess I wanted to bring up your point on about 72nd Street, the bus turning.
Yes.
I had an idea, but maybe we can discuss this under new business on what we can do to maybe make that better. Should I just?
Are you referring to the M57?
Yes. So the one,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just had an idea that maybe since Colleen is here, potentially having, you know how in the streets we have a scroll crossing zone, scroll X ING zone. We should have something like that says bus crossing zone, so cars would know not to go too far ahead and allow the bus to go through on the floor, on the paint perhaps. But
Yeah,
I wanted to bring that
what I
up.
was asking for, the transit signal prioritization would, if there was a red light, would allow the bus only. The bus would change that signal, and it would allow the bus to proceed and would not be in any conflict that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sarah?
Yeah, I'm so sorry I was late. I was at another meeting. So if you already discussed this, please just tell me and we can just move on. But I was just wondering if there was any update on the 24/7 service of the train and if that was coming back.
I did discuss that in the beginning. Many people have called for it. There are two answers from MTA. One is when the health commissioner of the state of New York says it's safe to do so. The governor will also have an important say in this. I've heard late summer, but I think it will largely depend on how many vaccinations have taken place and a few other factors, mostly the governor though.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I don't see any other hands raised either among the board or in the community.
Elizabeth, your hand raised.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I just had a quick, this may be for new business too, but just wanted to ask about, there've been a lot of things in the news in recent hours, I guess, about the vaccination sites across the city and mass transit access to those sites. Andrew, I don't know if you have anything to speak to about that, if there's anything that Community Board 7 specifically want to learn about or weigh in on.
One of the things that I mentioned earlier, maybe it was before you joined us, was we are making vaccination sites 24/7, but the train and bus service isn't 24/7. And something is really askew in that formula. Yes, there's some all-night buses, but it could take you, if you have an appointment for a vaccination, they're giving appointments now. It's not just walk in. I tried doing that myself today, and I see that it's all by appointment. But you don't know when your train, if you have to take multiple buses in the middle of the night or what have you. So I think that's an important issue. If we want restaurants to come back, if they close at midnight, the staff isn't leaving at midnight. They have to do cleaning and records and bookkeeping
it may be more
and
of
everything.
a planning perspective, because I think the issue is less the 24/7 and more that the sites that they've chosen are nowhere near, in many cases, are not near transit. So
one of the ones in Sunset Park is, but that's
Right.
one of the few.
Right. So I think that's just something, I don't know if we can put the.
And
pedal
I
to the
understood,
metal.
I heard today, Elizabeth, that, Met Stadium is going to be one of those sites, and
Right.
obviously that's accessible.
It is accessible. That is true. Sounds like it's going in a good direction.
Yes.
We have one person from the community who's raised their hand, Sanjeev Mata. I've unmuted you.
Good evening. I am representing the Schwab House Board. We are a building on 11 Riverside Drive between West End and 11 and Riverside. I also have with me the representative from the building across from us on Riverside, number 5 Riverside Drive. We brought this issue up in the last meeting, and never received any word that it had reached any form of consideration. And we have written to Mark, and I have also seen the email go out to Howard. It concerns the illegal parking that takes place on our street. I understand that there is some variance that has been given for this parking, which was done unilaterally without any consultation with our street residents. It has been our experience that this completely blocks access for any large vehicle, such as an ambulance, to come down the street when these taxis that are trying to park there for purposes of making their observation of their religion at the mosque around the corner. And while we understand why you might have done that, there are places on much wider streets, and the issue, in fact, the police had said that that Riverside Boulevard was the appropriate place to park, but for some reason, probably because of the distance, we find everybody on our street. This is a serious health issue and safety issue for our building.
Let me put you at ease. This is something that is definitely on our radar. I have contacted our council member. We are awaiting the setting up of a meeting with the 20th precinct and your building and other buildings that are involved. We're well aware of this problem, and we hope to have an answer for you very soon. And we would invite you to the meeting if we know how to reach you.
Yes, you do. You have my email. I just sent you an email.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Mehta, and trust me, it is on our radar.
I thank you very much for your consideration.
You're welcome.
Eleanor Selling, you're unmuted. Eleanor?
Hi, I can only echo what Sanjeev said. I brought up this issue in November, and Mark had said, I know he's no longer chair of CB7, but Mark had said he hoped to have it resolved by contacting Helen Rosenthal by year end. She hasn't responded to us, our phone calls or our emails either. So I just want you to know the status. You know, it's NYPD permits double parking on 73rd Street between Riverside and West End. That's all. You've got the material, and we really appreciate the fact you're working on it. We just hope that there's a resolution.
We're gonna ramp it up now, believe me.
Andrew, I'm voting for you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all.
You may have forgotten this is a discussion of mass transit, but I don't see any other hands on mass transit.
Right.
So we're going to move on to our next. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It'll save us time later.
Yeah, I know.
Move on to our next agenda item, which is left-hand turns. A lot of the crashes in our community and in the city have been caused by vehicles making left-hand turns into crosswalks where pedestrians are walking, crossing with green lights. We had a notorious death in our community of Cooper Stock, which epitomized that problem. And Ken has a presentation, and he asked me to share it with you. So I'm going to, oh, it worked. So I'll leave it to Ken to go through this presentation from the city.
Okay, thanks, Howard. Colleen, this is the your agency study from 2016, which was excellent. And I'll just run through, if you don't mind, I'll run through the high points and what the study's major findings were, and then I'll have some of my own recommendations. So
I go into the key findings.
The last year, 2.5 years here in our district, there have been 495 crashes, injuring 303 pedestrians and 204 cyclists, just in 2.5 years. And 3 pedestrians and 1 cyclist lost their lives. This study points out that drivers turning left account for 19% of pedestrians and bicyclists killed or seriously injured. And that's compared to right turns by drivers, which account for only 6%. So more than 3 times the number are killed by left turning drivers than right turning. Not only Cooper Stock, but Gene Chambers was killed the year after by a left turning driver. And I know of recently at least 2 cases in the lower 60s in Broadway where cars or vans turning onto Broadway struck and killed pedestrians. Seniors are much more likely to be injured and killed by vehicles. The average age of victims in left-turning crashes is 67 compared to 50 for the victims in right-turn crashes. Why are left turns so dangerous? Motorists tend to make left turns faster than right turns, and that's apparently the main reason that the average age is higher, because they're going at higher speed, and older pedestrians are frailer and more likely to die if hit at higher speeds. Number 2, the driver's vision is obscured by the vehicle's A pillar, which is the pillar between the windshield and the driver's door, which according to DOT, quote unquote, dramatically obscures the driver's vision of a pedestrian crossing to their left as they're making the turn. So there's a significant blind spot. Reason number 3 is the pressure of both oncoming traffic and traffic behind the driver, which causes drivers to pay attention to that and not necessarily pedestrians who are crossing. And also, left turns are more complicated than right turns. They require a lot more mental and physical effort on the part of drivers, what DOT calls driver workload, compared to right turns. And there's also, maybe even most importantly, a greater area of exposure for pedestrians when they're crossing in front of drivers making left turns as opposed to right turns. According to the graphic in the study, it looks like about 50% more area of exposure. So, DOT found that injuries involving left turns typically occur when drivers turn from a minor street, which is usually one way, let's say maybe from one of our cross streets on the Upper West Side, onto a street that is 60 feet or wider and usually 2-way. So for instance, from a cross street onto West End Avenue, onto Broadway, onto Riverside, something like that. There are a number of treatments that DOT outlines in its in the report. One is something called split LPI, which is where LPI means leading pedestrian interval, means that a pedestrian has a head start to cross before any traffic can move. And a split LPI means that the pedestrians get a head start and then drivers can turn, but they have an amber left turn arrow, warning them to exercise caution. Another treatment is a simple LPI that gives pedestrians a head start into the crosswalk, and then drivers get a green to turn.
Ken, can you scroll down to the solutions part of the presentation?
I can't scroll down.
Good, thank you.
I'm not necessarily going through these in the same order that they did, but let's see. I did LPIs, left turn traffic calming pilot, I talked about split LPIs. Left turn restrictions are just banning left turns certain times, or maybe completely banning left turns, which is obviously the safest thing from a pedestrian's or a cyclist standpoint. Protected bike lanes can really help because they force drivers to make a wider turn. They can't cut the corner. They have to slow down. So if you think of a driver, let's say going west on 87th Street and then making a left on Columbus, and they're going to cross the protected bike lane, they have to go around that pedestrian refuge to make a left turn, which slows them down. So that helps. I'm going to skip over the public information campaign. Another thing that they mentioned in the report, I'm not sure it's on that list, are hardened center lines, which guide drivers through the intersection and force them not to cut corners, and also medians and refuges that also guide drivers and slow them down. If you think of what DOT did at 97th and West End Avenue after Cooper Stock was killed, they put in this refuge that is really prominent. I think it has a bollard on it, and that unfortunately that is not in too many places other than where we have protected bike lanes.
Ken, if I could just say something else that happened as a result of the tragic death of Cooper Stock was we asked and we got DOT to make the traffic signals such that if you race through from 97th Street onto West End, you couldn't continue to race through and make the right turn to go to the Henry Hudson Parkway. That light would stop you. So no reason to speed.
Okay. Yes, that's important. Left turn bays is another that eliminates back pressure from drivers behind the driver attempting to turn. That's shown to give a 15% injury reduction. And I talked about protected bike lanes. So DOT has rolled out each one of these in one place or another in our district. But I think that we could be doing more. I know that, there was one treatment that I didn't mention, which is one of the most important, which is called split phase. And that means that when a pedestrian is crossing, drivers attempting to turn left do not have a green or an amber. They cannot legally turn. And they can only turn once the pedestrian no longer has the walk signal. And so they're essentially split. So, and that, other than banning left turns entirely, is essentially the safest way to treat an intersection for left turning drivers and pedestrians and cyclists. DOT has this in a few places in the district. In 2010, they put it in at 86th and Columbus for drivers going south on Columbus and trying to turn to go east on 86th Street. There's a dedicated left turn arrow. Drivers who are turning left have to wait for cyclists to clear the intersection going straight and for pedestrians to cross. And once pedestrians no longer have the walk signal, then the drivers can turn left. There are a couple of other intersections in the district where this exists. But my feeling is, and that this should be the default. And we should know why it's not possible at any particular intersection. And it should be happening, I think, everywhere where it's at all feasible, particularly given the problem of the A pillar, which DOT acknowledges creates this dramatically large blind spot for drivers. And yet, in most overwhelmingly, most of the intersections, we have the situation where a pedestrian can legally cross and a driver can legally make a left turn into them. And in many cases, they may not see them. So this is just, as we say, an accident waiting to happen. And also, I think, as I mentioned, I think we should have more Cooper Stock style refuges jutting out into the street to slow drivers down and prevent them from cutting the corner and making sharp left turns. That also should be the default. So maybe I'll leave it at that. Maybe
there's a couple of questions for you, Ken. Yeah. Jay, you are first, I think.
It's not a specific question. I had sent Ken a note when he sent us members of the committee this study, which gave us a chance to familiarize ourselves a little bit with what DOT had done. And my question was, obviously this is a very important safety issue. It's obviously been dealt with for several years. And, I know since I've joined this committee, I can't count on two hands the number of times I think we've asked DOT to study various situations with the caveat that we're not the experts. DOT has the expertise. So I asked Ken if DOT has done what is obviously a very thorough and exhaustive study, and after doing that, they devised a comprehensive plan to deal with this with various solutions, which they've implemented in one degree or another. And it seems that we have to defer to their expertise and their judgment as to what works in any particular location. And I wasn't completely sure as to why this was being reviewed by us at that time. I mean, of many things I've seen, this study seems to be perhaps the most comprehensive. We know I think we're still waiting for several studies to come about and be implemented. This one has. So I guess I'm asking what the objective of this discussion ultimately is. It seems that the issue is being dealt with by DOT.
Well, as we often as a board respond, ask DOT for things. We have a pretty good idea of what's in their toolbox, but we will, for instance, say we need a red light here, maybe we need a stop sign here, speed bump, protected bike lane. DOT responds to many political stakeholders, and we're one of them. And if we think, for instance, when this study was done, they had implemented only 28 split LPIs in the entire city. We have 6,000 miles of streets. I don't know how many thousands of intersections that is, but 28 split LPIs is not a whole lot.
Do we know if they've instituted more, Ken, since that time?
I don't. Maybe
as Lisa, I guess, said on chat that this is a citywide a program.
When you have a bike lane, as we do on Columbus, and you have eastbound streets, which are left-hand turns, why wouldn't every eastbound street that's bordered by a bike lane not have this split phase? That seems to me
Well, I guess, Andrew, I'm just suggesting that with this study having been done, everybody agrees that it's a serious issue and it's a serious safety issue.
And I've seen the chat, and 81st Street is particularly dangerous, and that has a split phase.
Can we, whether it's Ken or you guys as co-chairs, concentrate this into a specific
recommendation
or resolution, give us a list and let's see. I mean, if you guys think that DOT needs to do more and do left, then let's make a list and see if the sense of the committee and the board is to submit a request.
Well,
Okay.
I offered a list at the end of my remarks, split phases, making them the default, making medians, such as at 97th and West End Avenue, the default. And I have one other idea, but I could save that, which is completely.
It sounds like Ken, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but it sounds basically like you're asking them to greatly expand the use of solutions where appropriate, that they recommended, they implemented them. It sounds like the basic concern is they haven't done enough of them.
Yeah. Also, if you read the report closely, they mention split phases, which I'm pointing out are the ultimate solution. They don't really include split phases in their statistics. They say they put them in, for instance, at Columbus and 86, but they don't herald them, which is interesting. And I don't really know why that is, but I think, we need to push them on that.
I also think if everyone's amenable, whatever proposals put on the table, and it sounds like it'll be a request to DOT with certain specifics, we ought to ask them if they can update the report as far as the statistics, and specifically, because the report was fairly detailed as to their estimates of the reductions in injuries and fatalities that the various solutions result in. We should ask them to update it.
Yes, that could be part of the resolution, yes.
There's some number of hands, if you can take some more.
Yep, Steve.
Steve?
Why don't you go through everyone first? I raised it when nobody was raised, so let me go last and let everyone else.
Okay, thank you. Roberta?
We have one at 72nd and West End Avenue, and the only reason I feel safe crossing there is if I start crossing when the second the light turns green, because the cars turning left turn so fast. There's no neck down. There's no, if you're in the street when the cars start turning, they're turning into the eastbound lanes when they should be turning into the westbound lanes. And it's anywhere we can increase this is really helpful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We have a couple of people from the community who'd like to speak. Peter Arlington.
Hi, I'm sorry. I put my hand up back when we were still talking about mass transit and wanted to find out more about the gas tax that Andrew had presented back a number of months ago.
Oh, yes.
Was any movement on that?
A number of state elected officials are discussing it. I'm hopeful that some will actually put forth a bill. But yes, it is definitely up for discussion.
Okay, I'd like to be supportive of that. The other thing that I'd like to bring up for future reference is the possibility of engaging the traffic police, the meter maid type persons, as speed control and bicycle control. Just we're facing a real onslaught of vehicle speeds and reckless driving by both motorized bikes and by cars. And it's, I'm noticing it most when I'm out with the open streets. But whenever I'm out, I feel that the speed of cars is higher than it should be. And I know the police are not, it's not a high priority, or it seems not to be a high priority right now.
Yeah, Peter, I've noticed that as well. And we've just had a chat on this chat group about the issue that Ken raised, and specifically the intersection of 81st and Columbus. But I can think of at least 4 or 5 intersections that are poster children for speed cameras. And I'm really hopeful that we can get an expansion of the speed camera program, because I think it will save lives. And I don't know why it's so tough to get this approved by Albany. I really don't.
Got it. Well, I mean, I wouldn't mind the speed limit being dropped another 5 miles an hour. I wouldn't mind.
That's great for those that obey the speed limit, but the ones you're talking about are not obeying.
Right. But then the other part is just trying to get some sort of enforcement, which is a major concern.
Enforcement, that's the key.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Jeanette? Jeanette?
Hi
Rao?
there.
Hi.
Yes. Yes. So I enjoyed Ken's presentation, and I was just wondering, a couple years ago when they decided to do Weston Avenue, it seemed like they included a lot of those proposals. Have we ever gotten like a update on Weston Avenue after they did the improvements, like, after Cooper Stock passed away and we changed the street name?
I'm sure DOT has statistics that they've been keeping, but I haven't seen them. Although I think the really major street treatments were only at 95th and West End and 97th, where the 2 fatalities were. Street treatments like the concrete medians, but I stand to be corrected.
Lisa Orman?
Hello.
We have committee members first, Ken.
Oh, sorry, I went off.
That's okay.
We'll go back to the
Call me
committee.
later. Do you want to call on me later, Howard? Sorry.
Why don't you go, and then we'll go back to the committee.
Okay. So I just wanted to point out a different sort of take on this, and that is that as a city, if we're ever going to reach our safety and climate goals, we need to move at a much higher pace than we are right now. And as a city, what I've read is that we have a goal of 80% of trips being made by transit, walking, and biking. And we're sort of stubbornly hanging around the 67% level. And yet we know exactly what gets people out on bikes and walking, and that's safer infrastructure. I also wanted to point out that UPS designs their vehicle routes to reduce or eliminate left-hand turns. And they do this for many reasons, but apparently it's more efficient and it wastes less fuel, which is very important to a for-profit company, but it also reduces the likelihood that their vehicles will be involved in a crash. So I offer that up as more information.
Thanks, Lisa. Back to the committee now, Barbara Adler and then Sarah Lind.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I wondered, Ken, if you would mind telling me again what a split phase is. I don't know that term.
Yeah, split phase means first the pedestrian can walk all the way and has enough time to walk all the way across the street. And then the turning drivers have a left turn arrow and or a green light, turn left. But the two, you can't, so a pedestrian can walk across the street with the confidence that a driver will not be legally turning into them, which is
Ken, that's not true. At 72nd and West End, I can't make it across the street, and I'm pretty bad.
That's probably then because all you have there is an LPI. You just are given a 6 or 7 second head start.
I had a couple of things I wanted to say. I basically agree with what Jay said. This seems like a very, very comprehensive study that was done by DOT. I have no issue with asking Colleen if DOT could update it. I think it would be interesting to see if they have more LPIs than they had in 2016. I think those were amazing innovations. I would like to see more of them for sure. I agree that there are some dangerous, very dangerous intersections. I have brought this to Colleen's attention when I ran the Columbus Avenue bid, and Howard, I think you met us there once regarding 79th and Amsterdam Avenue, where you can easily get caught between cars that are coming east and turning right onto Amsterdam, and cars that are turning left onto Amsterdam as well. And you can get trapped between two of them. And I have done that myself more than once. All right,
and Barbara,
so
if you're coming east and you turn right on Amsterdam, you're in deep trouble.
I meant to say when you turn to go north on Amsterdam Avenue, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's right. Anyway, all right. I would have liked to have read this in detail. Ken, you sent it to committee members last night at around 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. There certainly wasn't time out of a very busy day today with various things. And I think it's premature to ask to vote on anything. I would like to see a list that maybe you could generate of exactly what you're asking for, and some sort of a draft resolution. And also, we have to keep in mind that both Columbus and Amsterdam are truck routes. And for that reason, the traffic is fairly heavy there. And I'm not saying that I condone that or anything, but they are shopping streets, and there's deliveries all day long. And I think that shopkeepers and landlords and other people who have a vested interest in the area should be given the opportunity to come to a meeting like this. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. I think that, we've talked a lot on this committee about the safety of pedestrians being our top priority, as I think it should be. Every New Yorker is a pedestrian. Pedestrians are the most vulnerable users of our streets, and we should be, doing everything we can to improve safety. I have 2 little kids who I want to feel like they're safe crossing our streets. I have, an elderly mother-in-law who I want to feel that she's safe as she, doesn't walk as quickly as she used to. And, obviously that's just a small microcosm, but that's our district, younger people, aging people, everybody needs to be able to use our streets safely. So I think we should be taking, every action we can to make our streets safer. So I would support this.
Thank you. Doug?
Yeah, this is just a technical question. And, I'm always impressed by, I shouldn't say always, but I'm often impressed by DOT studies. They go to school for this. This is what their area of expertise is. So I appreciate the comprehensive nature, even though I think would love to see an updated study. But anyway, the question is on this is not which is at hand for us, but on the A pillars in the automobiles. I was just wondering, Ken, do you happen to know, or does anyone know if the automobile industry is studying this in terms of, manufacturing codes, and then on a more localized level, if all cars and New York City vehicles, since there is that blind spot with that pillar, if there's a way to change going forward any of those vehicles to remove that blind spot, if there's a way to put a translucent pillar or a transparent, has this been addressed at all within, and of course in New York City buses, I know that it
has been addressed.
Right.
Yes.
Just wondering if that's another, thing to do to mitigate injury and death.
Yeah. Far as I know it's on the car industry's radar. They know about it. Whether they're willing to, change designs. Clearly to eliminate it, it would require some sort of material that is both really, really strong and totally translucent. I don't know whether that exists, that wouldn't pose additional dangers to the driver or to occupants. It's, you know as well as I do how hard it is to get the car industry to make major changes, and this would be a major change.
It would
The
have to be
anti-crash
transparent,
technology
not
is
just
a step forward.
And someone just mentioned in the chat that there is technology to have a camera to project and to fill in on a digital, there's always things to think about.
Yeah.
Stephen?
Thanks. Two quick questions, one simple. Ken, I think you mentioned that there was at 86th Street in Amsterdam, just for my, that there was a couple of streets that were doing this already. Could you
86 in Columbus. Yeah.
86 in Columbus. Thanks.
And 81st in Columbus.
And actually 86 in Central Park West has it in, out of the 4 turning movements, 2 of them have split phases and the other 2 are not.
I guess my next question, and similar, I'm not gonna say I breezed through it. I had a chance to look at it and certainly want to look at it more in depth, the report you sent. But to what extent, and I think you mentioned it a little bit in your presentation, but to what extent do they look at kind of an avenue making a left turn versus a side street making a left turn? Those kind of feel like different experiences. In a bike lane, I'm always nervous about it on the avenue, and on a smaller street, I feel more as a pedestrian. I'm always looking back to make sure no one's going in. And just a general question of, is that addressed, and any thoughts and comments on those different experiences?
Yeah, they did look at that. Without going back to it and looking at their details, what the main finding was that the main danger is when drivers are turning from a minor street one way, let's say West 87th, going west, onto a major street, more than 60 feet wide or 60 feet wide. And it's even more dangerous if it's two-way. So let's say turning onto West End Avenue from a quote unquote minor street. That's where a lot of the trouble happens.
Was Jay?
I was just going to make a suggestion that, like, obviously nothing is going to happen here vis-a-vis a DOT construction-wise for a while. And would it be possible, and I think this also reflects my general feeling about resolutions and wording and so forth, to once we're finished with this discussion and everybody's had a chance to weigh in, if between now and our next meeting, we can formulate a specific resolution that we can vote on, so we know what the language is, we know what the list of requests is, and we don't have to have another extended discussion, but just represent it as the resolution, a consensus resolution arising out of this meeting, and then vote on it specifically. Maybe Ken can take the lead in doing the drafting. Or...
No.
I think that makes sense. I understand a lot of. I'm sorry I sent the report out so late, I think I'd be happy to do a draft and then
even late. It was helpful. Gave a chance to, set the stage for it.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, I just think it's time to get specific and formulate something, and
While we're discussing this, and we have Colleen with us, could we ask DOT if they've looked at the split phase in all the places that they intend to, or they're still investigating where to put more of them, or?
Hey, Andrew, it's Colleen. I wouldn't be able to tell you where we have split phase currently. I wouldn't have that information readily available to me. I mean, I think if you have the specific locations, I can find out if our signals division have implemented split phase signals there.
So even back in your office, you don't have a list?
I'm working from home.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
There must be a list
They couldn't send you a
somewhere.
list, huh?
I can, if you have the specific locations which was mentioned, send them to me and I can find out.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you. Yep.
Colleen, do you have any data on, for instance, how many split LPIs DOT has in the city at this point, or split phases, or?
We do have that data, and I have to tell you, it's a lot. It's a lot because we've implemented, you know, a lot of it citywide.
Is it possible?
But we do have that data. Yes, we do.
Can you share that with us?
I can find out. I can't promise if we can share that information, but if you are requesting anything like that, I would suggest that you FOIL, but I can definitely find out if that information is shareable.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get back to the board by tomorrow. I'll find out in the morning.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you know whether you have any plans to update the study, which was 5 years ago?
You know what, I want to say, you know, traffic studies that were done 5 years ago, I mean, you know, I want to say it's not that old, but if there is room for improvement and if we can look at any safety measures that we can implement, you know, we'll do that. We'll definitely do that.
Okay, because the study referred to pilot things that you were doing back then based on preliminary data. And basically what you said was, if it looks like it's worth doing, in other words, it, you know, really cuts down on injuries and saves lives, then we're going to roll it out. And I don't know whether, it'd be nice to know whether that has happened or whether it's still in the pilot stage.
Yeah, I think it's I don't want to say it might be in its pilot stage because 5 years is a long time. I can investigate it and get back to the board on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the plan is to have an action item for the next committee meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation, Ken.
And hopefully we'll get information in the interim.
Yes.
Right.
Information is better. Old business, new business. I made a list of Colleen. Are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Great. Some outstanding matters, and then we can go to the rest of the committee. We had the 72nd Street resolution. Can you give us the status of that?
You know, Howard, we're still working on that. I don't have any information to share with you. As you know, as I mentioned to the community board, as soon as we have something, you know, we'll let you know. We'll schedule pre-meetings and, you know, we'll schedule a meeting to come before the transportation committee.
Maybe you could give us some sense of the process. That might be helpful.
I mean, yeah, the process is that our bike division have to look at the corridor, river to river. They would have to meet with other DOT divisions. It could be our signals division, our roadway divisions, or geometric design divisions to get their input. And, you know, a presentation is, a draft presentation is put together, which is what, you know, again, we would review it internally. And then once it's finalized, we would have a pre-meeting with the leadership of Community Board 7 and with elected officials. And then we would come to the community board to give a presentation. That's our process.
You know where exactly in the process it is now?
You know what? I believe that it's being reviewed by our bicycle division, our bike division. I can find out where they are in terms of it.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Okay, we had the, this was about a year ago, I think, the Cross Central Park paths, so that we've discussed this, the paths that would allow cyclists to cross the park from east to west. Right now, 72nd Street is the only significant one. There's some latitude for at 96th Street. There was going to be a panel put together with the Conservancy, the police, the DOT,
So this is the Central Park Crosstown bike paths. We have not put together a working group panel as what was, what was recommended by the community board, but we are in communication with the Conservancy, and we are working with them to see what improvements that we can make. I assure you, we're working with them on that because we recently had a conference call with them, and we have some follow-ups with them. So I want to say we should have something soon to share with the community board.
That'd be great. An issue that I've sort of taken on that's of great interest to me is loading zones. At this point, I'd settle for loading zone singular in the area I live. I think many of us have made the point that this is the absence of loading zones has caused double parking, lack of safety, all sorts of issues. What exactly is going on with regard to that important issue?
I think you had emailed Borough Commissioner Pinkar, and he had responded to you about the next steps with the loading zone. I have to look for that email. But I think he did mention that we are considering looking at the locations, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, okay. He did. He did.
Well, he said there was a need for some kind of study to figure out what the optimal optimal allocation is. And again, my response is whatever it is, it's certainly going to go. The optimal allocation of loading zones is not zero. So if anything can be done to expedite that, because that really is a particularly pressing issue, especially at a time when there's just so much being delivered.
Yes.
Because of online shopping. It's a literally permanent double parking near where I live. And I was driving down Columbus the other day, it was one lane, literally one lane. And that's just a problem. There's so many problems with that.
Howard, it's Steve. Can I just add to that, Colleen, I guess any data or any feedback on the loading zones that were put, I don't know what the program is called on West End. I'm on 86 in Riverside, so 7 or 85th, but I think it's 72nd up to 96th on West End. I think it's I don't know if it's a beta program or trial program, but there's many loading zones added to the end of the streets. They seem to be used quite often. Is there any, I mean, if there's a general update, Howard, on the topic, perhaps an update on that program as well. And when I recall reading it, an article that sort of said that program could be a beta program for future programs. So my long-winded question is, any update on sort of that program itself? And if we were going to talk about that, perhaps I would think that perhaps that may be a conversation for the specific request around loading zones as well. But they're everywhere up and down, and I'm curious if there was any update and how that plays into the bigger issue of loading zones.
Hi, Steve. By the way, congratulations on being the new chair of CB7. I know we're going to have a conference call hopefully soon. That's the neighborhood loading zone program that you're talking about that we implemented on the West End. Yes. And that has been really successful. And if I'm not mistaken, we sent a letter recently to the community board. I'm going to pull that letter and I'm going to forward it to you and copy Howard and Albert on it. In terms of, I think it was more of a letter in terms of, the analysis, if I'm not mistaken, that was done. I'll share that letter with you tomorrow.
Great. I guess the nuanced question is, how does the learnings from that and the success of that, how does that play into the general idea of loading zones in front of buildings or not in front of buildings? Yeah. And I thought the one nuance is that it's a 9 to 5, so then peak cars are still allowed to park at night times. But again, it seemed like a very smart, intelligent program. I see cars all the time. I mean, I see loading trucks in that, and I'm just curious how they would work together. But it seemed like a very interesting program, and it's good to hear it's successful. And I see it being used quite a bit. So I don't know how that picks her into the bigger picture of the idea across that Howard had talked about, which was for buildings as well.
Yep.
Oh, Steve, I just wanted to, it wasn't only for buildings, it was just for anything. There's literally nothing near where I live. So it's just, anything would be helpful.
Understood.
And the last thing I had on my list, which I won't
Sorry,
hold your
Howard.
feet. Oh, sorry.
I raised my hand. I just wanted to bring up a point. Maybe we can have this as I had an idea that maybe we can have as a conversation with our Business and Consumer Issues Committee. The idea of loading zone is a great, I like the direction of the idea of a loading zone so that we have a place for everything to just kind of get out of our way, out of the streets, out of our hair, to make the streets safer for cars, bikes, pedestrians, period. But I think what we're also missing is how do we keep the delivery drivers and the delivery workers safe too? You know, we've had rainy days, we had stormy days, and they're outside in the elements dealing with it, whether it's, 27 degrees or 101. So I think maybe if we can have a conversation and maybe have a joint committee meeting with us and BCI on what we can do to have companies like Fresh Direct or even Amazon have some type of retail and storefront for these employees to go inside. They have the same needs as us. They get cold, they get hot, they have to run to the restroom, they want a safe place to sit and eat. And I don't think it's fair. I don't think that we've considered that because we're not doing their role, we're not there, but sit outside, watch them, and just think about what would you be doing or what would be your concern. And I think that's something we should really think about and maybe bring up and see what we can do to kind of help them and help the community in the same way.
I think it's a great issue for BCI. I do know that loading zones would definitely be helpful. Maybe not if they have to go to the bathroom, but for when they're doing their job, I'm sure it would be enormously helpful. Last thing on my list was, and I won't hold your feet to the fire on this one, was the daylighting. That's a relatively new resolution. I just noted, and that's it for my list. Old business, new business. Who else has issues, questions, comments, criticisms? Nothing? Okay, Sarah.
Well, I emailed you too about it, but just that I had spoken to the woman who brought up the intersection at 72nd and West End. I think we've spoken of it before, but if we could put it on the agenda for next month.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the intersection Roberta has mentioned several times tonight as well.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
It's a very rough intersection. And we still don't have any information about 96th Street and West End Avenue. And that is a major.
That's true. The southwest corner, this curb extension, that's something we've been asking for.
We've been asking, and I think it is more dangerous, I think, I think 72nd is dangerous because I walk there all the time. But I think 96th Street, which I only walk by occasionally, is much more dangerous. We've had a resolution on it. And Colleen, if you could possibly do a little research and see if there's any possibility of doing something without, without a sponsor.
Roberta, I hate to tell you, we need a maintenance partner. We really do. I mean, I know we've been going back and forth about this one particular location. It would be great if the school can just jump on and do it,
The council member Rosenthal is trying to get a sponsor from one of the developers on 96th Street.
Even if it's like a local group in the community that would do it, or.
But we heard they had to have insurance, and the problem was the co-op board on the corner had a problem with the insurance.
Yeah,
Can you give me some information so I could maybe work with Helen to try and get it? I feel like that was one thing I committed when I was chair, and I failed dismally, and I'd like to see it through.
Yeah, insurance is definitely one of the major components to the maintenance agreement.
Yeah, can you send me a copy of the agreement and I can work on it?
I don't have like an agreement. I mean, I can send you
something.
One of our standard maintenance agreement.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Colleen. Lisa Orman?
Yeah, that was the same question I had. And I thought Roberta had secured that the school would do it during the school year and that the co-op across the street would do it other times of the year.
Well, the co-op didn't want to do it because of whatever. So Lisa, maybe you and I can work on this together.
Okay, yay.
Great. Anyone else?
Yeah, Howard.
Jay.
Just quickly, Colleen earlier mentioned something about doing a FOIL request to get some of the information we want. Just an update. As you know, when I joined the committee, I spoke with you. I had an interest in getting as much information as possible about the city bike and their contract with the city and their experience with accidents, et cetera. And the suggestion at that time was to do it by a FOIL request. That was last spring. The acknowledgement I got, it was like the beginning of the year, was they acknowledged the receipt and told me that I would get the information in March of this coming year, which was a little more than a year after I made the FOIL request. So just an update. Haven't gotten it. I'll look for it in March. And if anybody wants to make a wager on whether I see it in March, I'm open to proposals.
Anything else? Anyone else? I don't see any other hands up. So, oh, no other hands up. Great. This was a relatively short meeting. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.